So Dale, right now we're here talking about the ungulate hyperpopulation management strategy. Is this it? So why did the term hyperpopulation be used at this point? So what kind of research has Parks Canada done to determine that there is an overpopulation of elk and bison at this point? What kind of indicators did they use to determine the carrying capacity of the Elk Island area?
Okay, so most recently we undertake winter aerial surveys of the park, and we count the ungulates in the entire park. So this winter we did an aerial survey, and we have numbers for wood bison, plains bison, elk, and moose.
So how did you determine that there's overpopulation versus it being sort of a natural perhaps ebb and flow of the population above maybe a regular sort of capacity?
Yeah. So what we've done in the past, we have analysis showing us what the recommended adult population numbers are for the species, and what we've done is we've compared those numbers to the recent aerial survey results. And simply, for example, in the south side of the park, the aerial survey provided us we have about 275 moose. In the south side of the park, the recommended adult population for that part of the park is 75 to 100 animals.
Right. So I guess where do these recommendations come from? So where is that data coming from that says this is the recommended amount?
Yeah, we undertook that analysis. Parks Canada did with scientists and some university researchers as well.
Okay, is that information publicly available?
I believe it is, subject to check. I believe it is, Jordan.
Okay. And so when we look at the current situation, what we see on the table, at least what I've seen on the table so far primarily, is a cull of the population, a possible sending to slaughterhouse are kind of the first two options that I see kind of being promoted. Trans relocation has been sort of nixed to some degree because of chronic wasting disease. The possibility of it, although it doesn't seem that that's necessarily present, there's kind of a concern about it being there. Although translocation has been done before on many occasions. Then you have changing of the fencing, so habitat modification. Beyond that, what is really being seen, I guess, why are those first two, the culling and slaughterhouse, kind of at the top of the list, and what else is there in terms of non-lethal solutions being promoted?
Yeah, I would suggest, Jordan, that we don't really have a list of the top option or top two option or three options. What we're proposing is a series of, at this point in time, simply 5 management options that we haven't made a decision on, but nonetheless they do include those aspects you mentioned about a translocation. For example, translocation is only available to us for wood bison and plains bison. And of course, since the park's inception, we've donated 2,500 bison to other conservation initiatives around the world. The live sale to auction is also only available to us for bison. And it's because of the reason you did mention about chronic wasting disease, right? So to date at the park at Elk Island, we've never had a positive result for chronic wasting disease, but nonetheless, just given the risk and given the fact that you can't test for chronic wasting disease unless the animal is dispatched, that option is not available for a live auction for moose and elk.
But I know a cull is fairly in national parks, not something that is commonplace, to my understanding anyway. Why are lethal possibilities being considered in this particular case?
I would suggest that lethal management options are simply a part of the toolkit that we're looking at. A part of our analysis as well, Jordan, is we've also reached out to other national parks. Across the Parks Canada network, there are harvesting programs to reduce ungulate numbers. For example, in Gros Morne, in Terra Nova, and Point Pelee, they do have harvesting programs as well. So we've reached out and we're learning from their experiences as well. Should this be the route that's implemented? One of the options that's implemented.
Is there a concern at all, I guess, that culling could lead to more culling, because it doesn't really, as we were just talking about, doesn't necessarily deal with the underlying issue of the problem, because of course if you cull said number of elk from the population, then there's nothing stopping the animals that are currently there from continuing to just reproduce again, and for the population to continue to rise again. And in some cases we see kind of a bounce back effect with populations that are culled. Is that taking into consideration the long-term, effects or reiteration that may come with culling versus like long-term sort of behavioral or habitat modification?
Yeah. Well, the plan we're putting together right now is for a 10-year horizon, for management options over a 10-year horizon. But we're certainly interested if the public or the stakeholders or regional partners have suggestions for perhaps non-lethal other management options. We're open to hear, and we value that input.
In regards to how does in your mind, your experience with Oak Island, how does the fact that it's an enclosed park affect kind of the decision-making process as this develops? Like what kind of problems does that create?
Yeah, that's a great question. Elk Island National Park is the only fenced national park in Canada, so it brings with it a unique situation. One of the management options we are considering and we're welcoming feedback on is a modified fence. For example, jump rails to allow animals perhaps to leave the park, and they can be engineered in a way so that they perhaps couldn't get back in. So we've heard some opinions on that, some great feedback on that option, and it's certainly something we're going to consider in our toolbox as the plan's finished.
Has contraceptive options been considered at all?
Actually, it hasn't at this time. My understanding on that topic is that it simply is not implementable in Elk Island National Park.
Is there any reason why it's unimplementable that you can share?
Yeah, we're simply not considering it at this time. We're looking at the other management options.
Okay. And what about reintroduction of predators?
Yeah, it's not being considered at this time either. I've received a lot of questions, and we've got a lot of great comments on that. A couple just quick little points on that is it's very difficult for the park, for example, to maintain a predator pack within the park. We simply don't have the ability to contain it or maintain a predator pack within the park. And thus, being so close to agriculture and our neighbors and our grazing community around us, we need to be very mindful and respectful of their needs as well.
How does the idea of the park as a sanctuary for wildlife play into the planning process? Because, of course, it was established originally as a sanctuary for elk, and bison were brought in, of course, as well. Do you think hunting would change, allowing like the hunting or culling would change sort of, or injure the integrity of that concept of it as a sanctuary at one time, possibly still as a national park in that way?
I think the important point to note is that the ecological integrity right now at the park is being impacted significantly because of the hyperabundant population of ungulates. And if this continues, the ecosystem at the park will not be sustainable for current or future generations.
One question in regards to that. So the ecosystem is being damaged by overgrazing generally. Now, is it in particular areas of the park that the primary damage is being done? Or is it something that could be possibly mitigated by, along with other options, by kind of the promotion to redistribute sort of the herds to different areas of the park where the damage is being done, sort of thing?
Yeah. Two comments on that is what we're seeing just generally across the park as a whole. Okay. We're seeing overbrowsing of the forest and overgrazing of the grassland communities, which is impacting the ecological integrity throughout the entire park. And to your second point is we simply just don't have the ability to, control where the herds of animals may or may not choose to go.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
That's great.
That's great. Yeah.